Bully Resistance Show is brought to you by Nathan Alfred Insurance, an independent insurance agency located in Vienna, West Virginia. They specialize in auto, home, life, and business insurance. What makes this agency unique is the ability to shop the market for you. The Bully Resistance Show is also brought to you by Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Real Estate Center as a part of their community outreach. They truly believe that selling houses is important, but helping make our community a better place to live is even more important. The Bully Resistance Show is also brought to you by Valley Chapel United Methodist Church and United Methodist Church located in Fairmont, West Virginia, worshiping, praying, and living the Word of God as a family. Also want to thank Bobby and Michelle Jones, Jeff Belt, Pamela Sayre, Rick Modisett, Connie Pample, Jerry and Karen Gartrell, Crossroads Church. You can help us fight bullying in the public schools and help support the Bully Resistance Show with David Wells. For more information, go to www.davebond.org. That's www.davebond.org.
Welcome, everyone, to the Bully Resistance Show with David Wells, nationally known smooth jazz artist, CEO and co-founder of the Chocolate Jazz Foundation, and the co-host of a 2-hour syndicated radio program called Chocolate Jazz Radio. Bully Resistance is a weekly 1-hour show that's a motivational, informative, and inspirational program. We will have interviews with musicians, actors, government officials, politicians, psychologists, counselors, and just average day citizens. Of course, the topics will include making right choices, never giving up, desire, discipline, determination, bullying in public schools, the workplace, and in your community, bully resistance and prevention, self-defense, jiu-jitsu, and current affairs, and much, much more. And if you're ready, we are. Here's your host, David Wells.
I want to thank everyone for tuning in to another episode of the Bully Resistance Show with David Wells. My name is David Wells, and today we have a special guest. He's a husband, a father. Also, he is a radio producer, a co-host of a national syndicated radio show, now on 40 or 50 different stations across the country. So at this time, I want to introduce Aaron Clubb on the Bully Resistance Show. Aaron, thanks for coming on the show.
Well, thanks for having me.
Before we get started, if you can just give our listeners just a brief background of yourself, where you're born, where you're raised, your kids, grandkids.
Oh, sure. Wow, that's a lot. But, well, I'm from Missouri. I was born in St. Louis, raised about an hour south of St. Louis, in a small town called Farmington, Missouri. I grew up there, went to school and everything there, and went to a community college there. My major was music.
So you're a musician?
Yeah, musician. I actually when I was 5 years old, we were still living in the St. Louis area at the time, and I started learning how to play guitar.
Okay.
I was self-taught. Learned to read music, and the funny thing is that when I said I want to learn guitar, Mom was very persistent, and has a tight schedule for me. You know, okay, you're going to practice
right
half hour, whatever, every day at this time of day, and I don't want to hear no bones about it. You're going to play guitar, you're not.
That's
if
good.
You're going to play guitar, this is what you got to do.
You don't see that from parents anymore.
So that's where that's where the music actually started for me. And when I reached middle school, I wanted to join the band, the school band, and it was actually a concert band at the time, and I wanted to play trumpet.
Whoa, the pressure's on. Okay.
Yeah, but the band director saw that I was wearing braces.
Right.
He said, I don't think trumpet's probably for you.
Right now.
Yeah.
Right.
And he said, but I do need a tuba player.
Oh, okay.
So I said, okay, I'll do that. And
I didn't know that you played the tuba. I knew that you played the trombone.
Very little trombone. I just if it's a brass instrument, I can play any of them.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I play them well, but I can pick up any brass instrument. And so once I reached high school, my guitar playing, which I didn't really pursue it that much.
Right.
At once I left the St. Louis area, but when we moved to Farmington, I switched to bass guitar. They needed a bass guitar, and the assistant band director in middle school came up to me and said, "I heard you play bass guitar." And I said, "I play a little bit." I said, "I really don't know how to read the music, though." Not realizing, bass clef for tuba is actually the same thing for a bass guitar. It's just bass guitar is written an octave higher usually.
Right.
And it's usually the same thing. So I told him, I said, I can learn how to read over the summer and maybe be ready by the time we got into high school. But see, he wanted me in the top jazz band. There's two jazz bands
Sure.
in the high school.
Sure.
And there was a beginner jazz band and there was a jazz ensemble.
Okay.
And that was where the big dogs went.
Yeah. Right. Right.
But that's where he wanted me, and that's where he put me. And with the first day of school, I remember walking in there scared to death because I did not spend a lot of time learning how to read the music.
Right.
And I was scared to death, and I was thinking about changing classes. Put me in the beginner. And he said, "If that's what you feel like you need to do." So I went down there to try to do that, and it wasn't working out. So I just stayed in the jazz ensemble, and that's where I ended up learning to read bass guitar music.
Oh, okay.
And got, I thought, pretty proficient with it. And matter of fact, a band director from the college who is actually was known nationwide with a lot of major people. Mm-hmm. He says, "You got one." He told the band directors, "You got one heck of a bass player there."
Oh, really?
I said, "Oh, really?"
See,
Because he was talking about me, and I thought, "What?"
I've only listened to maybe one or two of sound clips that you played.
Yeah, and I haven't really picked it up. I haven't really played bass since I moved here.
Okay.
So
let me ask you this: so you probably have much a pretty depth of music.
Yeah.
So you also going into your kids. So do you have two kids?
Yes.
Two boys.
Yep.
And they have kids of their own. And do they currently live in Missouri then?
Yeah, they still live in Farmington.
Okay. Yep. Before we go into your story about being bullied, I think there's a lot of listeners that would like to know a little more about what you do as a co-host and a producer of a national syndicated radio show. And as I just mentioned, are you now on 40 or 50 radio stations now? Yeah,
I think we estimate around 50 radio stations at this point, and then we just recently added a way to stream the music where you can actually log in and listen to our show at any time.
And I know that one of the things that you have to have is you have to have a good product.
Yeah.
Before someone will even actually consider adding you on the radio station. But if you can just give us just a brief description of a co-host or radio producer goes through.
Well, actually, what I want before I actually go into detail on that, because it's like how did I actually start doing that? And because I never went to school for it. My background has always been music, and once I reached the collegiate level,
right?
Actually, my music pursuits kind of plateaued because I was starting a family, and of course, I always was involved with local nightclubs kind of things, and those bands never stayed together. They never worked out and all that kind of stuff. So I just kind of put my music scene on hold, so to speak. I mean, I would play in the church, and occasionally I would sit in. I was involved with a jazz vocal group with our college, and that was like every Wednesday we would rehearse and then we would perform. We actually got an award from Gene Perling.
Okay.
Gene Perling is a major writer for groups such as Manhattan Transfer. There's some other vocal groups that he did a lot of music for. But we got an award for best rhythm section in a contest.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Dang.
So that's actually a big award.
Yeah.
And we're very proud of that. But so life is on hold, and I moved here and ran into you actually,
right?
And started working with you and your music background, and we wanted to start a show, and it just kind of like fell in my lap. Which it never dawned on me that I wanted to produce anything, but the more we got involved with it, I said, you know what, I can do a better product, I think, than what was being put out there by the current producer that was doing it.
Right.
Not that he was doing a bad job or anything like that. It's just
because we were actually going into the radio station.
Yeah, we were actually doing the recording and stuff in the radio station. But the key is that we figured that if we wanted more radio stations to pick our program up, we cannot have it produced there and then sent out.
Right.
We were going to have to figure out another way to produce that. So that's what happened. It fell into my lap. I started learning the recording software on my own, and
so there wasn't really a time in life where you were thinking, I want to be a radio host or a producer. It just sort of, like you said, it just fell in your lap.
Yeah. Well, I was always interested in radio somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's, I was the owner of a radio station or somehow involved. I really never wanted to be a DJ.
Right.
But somehow I wanted to be involved with radio. I always wanted to.
Right.
And so this is where we ended up.
Let me ask you this. In regards to the radio stations have a tendency to switch formats if they get an itch or if they feel like they can get a bigger market.
Yep.
How have you been dealing with that kind of stress, knowing that, you get calls from radio stations, I want to add Chocolate Jazz Radio, and then you get calls, we're going to go ahead and drop you. I mean, how do you deal with that? Is that like you're up and you're down?
At first that can be a challenge because, if you're putting out a product, you're really proud of it sometimes. In most cases, at least what I've been putting out, I'm really proud of it. And I'm really proud of it in the sense that, it's not that it's because something I produced.
Right.
I do listen to our show, our radio program, as a listener. Am I entertained in any way? That kind of stuff. Is the music good? Does it keep my attention and that sort of thing? That's how I listen to it. That's how I I'm a critic of my own product.
Sure.
And so I'm very proud of what we're being able to produce. And so in the beginning years, it's a little heartening, I guess you call it, or disappointing that when someone adds you to their station, all of a sudden they drop you. It's like, why? But that's the nature of the beast with radio stations. I mean, because to radio stations, the bottom line is $1,
right?
And they gotta, if they're making changes, they got to do what they got to do, and there's not always room for your program, or your program doesn't fit the format that they're changing to, and so forth. So it happens all the time, because at the same time, you get disappointed when you're trying to push your show on another radio stations. They also, a lot of times you'll get a no.
Right.
They just don't have any room for you, or things like that. So
right. And I think that there's often times where when things go rough and they don't go our way, a lot of us want to quit. And have there been a time? I mean, you've been doing this radio show for how long?
7.5 years.
7.5 years. And I know there has been times, but has there been a lot of times when you just want to say, "Listen, I just can't do this anymore. I got to do something else." Because to hang on to something like this, where the radio stations and shows, it's just like a roller coaster. They drop you and they add you. I mean, what are some of the times that you wanted to quit?
Yeah, there has been times where I just wanted to give it up. It's mainly because, look, when you commit to a radio program or syndicated radio program, and you are committed to doing something as big as we've actually been able to do, and we're on 50 stations. So what does that mean? I mean, that means that you got to make a commitment to do something every week. So,
right.
If you're doing a weekly broadcast, every week you got to do something. You have to, or that's what you're committing to, and it gets tiresome at times. Or it just seems like things fall flat or anything like that. I'm not excited about it anymore or anything like that. That does happen occasionally. Right. Sometimes it's a burnout, and so there's been times where I took a month off producing a show, and in particular it was like Christmas time, because at the time we were involved with a local radio station that from Thanksgiving weekend to Christmas weekend, it was nothing but Christmas music.
Right.
And we were able to produce a show that was repetitive. We were able to repeat year after year with it. And so allowed me to actually take some time off from actually getting involved with producing a new show each week, which, that in itself is tedious. Mm-hmm. I mean, it can be. I mean, look at you. You just started this podcasting, and
sure,
you're trying to put your scripts together, and you're always telling me, man, this is tough.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
It is, and it is tough when you're trying, especially when you get involved with music. Mm-hmm. I got to sort through 20,000 songs to find music each week to put on the show because I don't want to be too repetitive.
Sure.
Because we're only aired once a week,
right.
And so I can't air the same song. Now, I say that our second hour is called a Top 10 Countdown. So if you're the artist is in the top 10 on the Billboard charts, then that can be repeated every week.
Right.
But our first hour, I can't repeat songs every week on it. I have to give new artists a chance. I have to, old songs, new songs, blah blah blah.
So there are times that you want to quit. I think the people that are successful, we all go through dry spells.
Yeah.
And where, like you said, where you plateau and nothing happens, but then you get a break, and things pick up again. But getting back to your show, your show is over 2 hours long.
Yeah, it's 2 hours.
And from the very beginning of doing a show, and I think I want the listeners to know how much time is invested in something like that, from the time that you begin the show, from everything that you have to do till doing the final mix. How much time do you spend on putting a show together?
Wow. Well, I normally start on Wednesday. I start looking at stuff on Wednesdays of that week because there's nothing really I can do with the program because, again, I mentioned about the Top 10 Countdown. The Billboard charts don't come out until Wednesdays. So I really can't do a whole lot with the show until that day.
Real quick, the Billboard charts are...
the Smooth Jazz Billboard charts is the big dog chart.
The rankings of the...
Yeah, the rankings of where the artists stand as far as their new singles for the week and so forth. So I really can't do a whole lot until Wednesdays. However, my mind is still involved when I hear a song. I say, I need to put that on the show.
Right.
That'll catch my time, and I'll write it down, and I'll remember. That's helpful.
Yeah, sure.
That's really helpful. I don't have to find another song,
Right.
But so Wednesday evenings, I'll start in. Thursdays at night, I'd really work on the script, and that takes sometimes a couple hours just on script alone.
Yeah.
Because once I sort through all the music and so forth like that, then it takes about a couple hours. And then Saturday mornings we record it, and that takes about an hour to record. And then we're looking at 3 to 4 hours from there that I'm editing and EQing and producing everything of it, and then to get the final product out.
So you're looking at 8 to 10 hours.
Yeah.
Just to put a 2 hour show together. And for doing that for 7.5 years, it's amazing. What kind of music format is the radio show?
It's actually smooth jazz, and of course we can elaborate on what smooth jazz really is. I mean, just the word jazz is so. It has such a wide spectrum of different styles, and smooth jazz, I would say, is the most popular style because it really involves. To me, it's a good definition of smooth jazz is instrumental R&B with the jazz element to it. But it's still evolving some because now a lot of the artists are involving R&B artists, and so it's kind of a mix of that now. Mm-hmm. So you can call it smooth jazz or adult contemporary instrumentals or whatever, but that's about what it is.
Looking at the history of your radio show, you have done dozens and dozens of interviews with artists Grammy winners, multi-Grammy winners, living in LA, Chicago, and but let me ask you this: was there ever a time where you had a radio show that everything that you've done went wrong? I mean, from the mix to the interview itself. I mean, was there any show that you remember that was just went so wrong?
Wow. No, you know what? I don't really recall any really bad shows. I mean, you're going to have some really good shows, and you're going to have some mediocre shows, but I really can't say nothing really bad. I mean, I think the only challenge that regarding the radio program was doing interviews over the phone, because we're not actually in front of that artist, or the artist is not in your studio face to face.
Right.
So the phone issue is the biggest thing, and it's because the quality. I'm a stickler about the quality. I don't want it to sound like they're on the phone, so, and that's difficult to deal with. So, but the only other thing I could say that something went bad or wrong was the software that we were using in the beginning. It wasn't as good as the one we're using now. And, the quality may be, a little less than what we would like. But
have you ever had any co-host that helped you on a show? Because this is a 2-personality show,
right? That
was did horrible.
No, I can't say that they have. I mean, we've had some hosts on here that are co-hosts or someone that sat in the second seat and that wasn't really familiar with radio or what to do with the microphone and those issues. You got to deal with. But I mean, I wouldn't say it was bad. It was just a learning phase.
One of the reasons why people are successful in what they do is they set goals so they're focused. And there's different types of goals that you can make: self-development goals, you can family goals, career goals, short-term goals, long-term goals.
Yeah.
What do you have any short-term goals as a radio producer or a co-host?
Yeah, get paid.
Get paid more.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I mean, see, this is one of the things about this show is that, the Chocolate Jazz radio program, is that I love it enough to do it for free.
Wow.
And it's just because, like I said, I'm so proud of the program.
Right.
I like the product that we're putting out. So, currently we're not making. Like I said, we don't charge radio stations to play our show, and we don't have any sponsors at this time.
Right.
And so
we're not looking. You're not looking.
We're not really pursuing that as hard as we could be. And so therefore, we're not getting. We don't get paid for the show itself, and so I'll make nothing for it. I just do it because I like it. I love it.
What we've been doing, what you've been doing, is that you've been branding the product as Chocolate Jazz Radio program. I mean, you can go ahead and start sponsoring or getting sponsors and advertisers anytime you want.
Yeah, in particular now, because now that we've got a number of stations that are airing the program. Which makes it a lot easier to get some sponsors, and it's just a matter of putting things together to pursue that. And I'm sure we can start getting some sponsors for it now.
Sure. I want to go ahead and go into a different direction, and maybe you can actually share some light on this. One of the things that bug me to death are people's attitude towards life. I mean, I think people's attitudes has a giant effect on their life and actually on people that are around them. What drives me crazy is when people say, I can't catch a break. And Aaron, and I'm sure that you've heard this mostly in the music business, where you hear these musicians, well, I never caught a break, and so that's why I'm not doing music. And what a lot of musicians and a lot of people don't know is that there are people like them that haven't got a break. They're no different than you and me. And, they don't know stories about how musicians or people that are entrepreneurs that are making millions and millions of dollars, where they were beating the pavement for years and years and years. I mean, one of the country artists that I mentioned is Toby Keith. A lot of people don't know that Toby Keith was hitting the pavement for 10 years until he finally got a break.
Sure.
So
we just recently in our radio program, there's one of the top 10 artists, Marion Meadows, was discovered by playing his horn in the New York's Grand Central Station. He got noticed there.
Right.
Just, you see people on the sidewalks playing their instrument. People walk by and put money in their case. That's an example too. So.
I'll read this. Psychologists say there's only two instinctual fears that we were born with: the fear of falling and of loud noises, and all the other fears we learn, like the fear of failure, fear of success, public speaking, spiders, confined spaces, heights, zombies, thunder and lightning, dentists, doctors. What fears, if any, did you have being a producer and a co-host for a radio show?
My hearing.
Well, I never
losing my hearing.
Whoa, that's pretty in depth, man.
Well, I mean, if I can't hear what I'm producing, I know Beethoven wrote some magnificent pieces of music,
right?
When he was deaf. But it's hard for me to fathom what that would be like. I mean, that's one of my. That would be a big fear of this of producing the show.
Let me ask you this. I know we talked about this real briefly about why do most people don't reach their goals or live up to their true potential, and I think it's a toss-up between people not knowing what they want in life. I think that's one of them.
Yeah.
But also, we've talked about a fear of failing.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of a good example. It's just like if you have a dream of starting a business or like a restaurant or anything else, you have to have a lot of capital, and that there's a good chance, based on all the statistics, that you're going to lose a lot of that money, if not all. And
sure, yeah.
But why do you think people do not actually reach their full potential or their dreams? Do you agree with what I just said?
Yeah, I definitely agree with what you said. They just quit too early. They just a lot of times, in order to be successful, you have to beat the path, like you said. You just got to keep beating it, and a lot of people quit just a tad too soon.
Right.
And I've seen and heard stories. Many of them were had they just stuck it out another week,
right?
Because what they were doing fell on somebody else's lap, and that one, just 1 week later, boom, there it was.
Right. I think this. I think one of the reasons why people don't actually reach their full potential or their dreams is because they get comfortable. And hear me out. When somebody has a job where they're used to a set income and where they're used to certain things, they're saying, well, it's like this. It's like if I actually have this dream right up here at the peak of this, this mountain, and I'm working my way up, and I'm halfway up there, and I'm thinking, wow, the money's really coming in, everything's going good, and then I can come complacent or comfortable and not continue my dream. But do you feel that a lot of people can get comfortable where they're at and that's one of the reasons why they don't pursue their dreams?
Yeah. There's a lot of different reasons why people quit too early. Being comfortable is a huge challenge to overcome.
Right.
It definitely is, because you get comfortable and you just don't have any motivation to do anything more to continue to grow further.
Right.
And so then you end up being stuck, and then next thing you know it, you're getting burned down on where you're at, even though you're still comfortable, but it's just like you're in a rut. You don't know how to get out of it, and it's just that's a huge challenge to overcome.
There's one more thing that I want to mention about why we think that people don't pursue their dreams or reach their full potential, and I think it's called circumstances, and I feel that people blame their circumstances, their environment, their background, why they're not successful. It's like with me as a musician. I'm thinking, well, shoot, the reason that and for the longest time I didn't get a break was because I lived in West Virginia. I'm thinking, if I lived in LA or if I lived in Chicago, New York, or I don't have the money, or I don't have the contacts, or I don't have a radio producer manager. but it gets worse where people, they might be blaming their parents. And I think and doing an opposite of that is that, if they have a dream and they get rejected or it failed, they can go back. Well, my parents, they were never successful, so and so they sort of just agree with that whole history, if that makes sense.
I understand what you're saying.
But anyway,
I think those are just excuses.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to say that I'm really successful at what I'm doing, but I'm feeling pretty good about it. I mean, I'm feeling good where I'm headed, and it's like I see light at the end of the tunnel. But the thing is, it's not your parents' fault. It's not where you live. That's not the fault. I mean, it's not your circumstances. It's not your fault. You want things to change. You've got to change.
Right.
In order for you to get better at what you're doing, you yourself have to make that change.
Dude, that is so right. I have been listening to so many videos and speeches, and they said if you want to make more income, if you want to get a bigger house, and if you want to grow your business, it's not them. You have to change first. Yeah,
your thinking has a lot is the main part of that. Your attitude. I mean, because, like for example, poor and broke are two. They sound like they're the same thing, but they're actually two different things. Poor is a situation. No, poor is an attitude. Broke is a situation. So your attitude has got to change from being poor to being rich, even though your situation may be still broke financially. But in order to change that, your mind has to change.
Right. I was reading a story about Mackenzie Dern and the people that watch MMA or UFC. She is a UFC fighter, and her dad, Megaton Diaz, he is actually 65 years old, and I thought this was a really inspirational story. But to make a long story short, he's 65 years old. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and he has many decades of experience in jiu-jitsu and widely regarded as one of the most feared. But he's made his money through that, and just recently he was actually robbed, and they took they actually robbed him of all his life savings, and they did an interview with him, and I'm really cutting this story short. And they asked him, how do you feel about this? He goes, they took my money, but they didn't take my lifestyle. They didn't take my capacity to make everything back again,
right?
Which was, which is true. They could have beat him to death. They could have paralyzed him. Anything could have happened. But he had a really good outlook on the negative that happened. Which was pretty cool.
Yeah, I was always told because I was involved with some multi-level marketing organizations before, and they know what they're doing. Really, they do.
Right.
And one of the things was that. The one thing that they always talked about in these large groups was your ability to make money or to make an income. Your ability to make income is your largest asset.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
I know you say, what's most important to you? Your health and all that kind of stuff. If you're healthy, you can make an income. That means your ability to make income is your biggest asset.
Right. Well, Aaron, if you don't mind, I want to go ahead and take a few minutes and recognize the sponsors and also let the listener know how they can actually support the Bully Resistance Show. That's next. The Bully Resistance Show is brought to you by Nathan Alfred Insurance, an independent insurance agency located in Vienna, West Virginia. They specialize in auto, home, life, and business insurance. What makes this agency unique is the ability to shop the market for you. The Bully Resistance Show is also brought to you by Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Real Estate Center as a part of their community outreach. They truly believe that selling houses is important, but helping make our community a better place to live is even more important. The Bully Resistance Show is also brought to you by Valley Chapel United Methodist Church and United Methodist Church located in Fairmont, West Virginia. Worshiping, praying, and living the Word of God as a family.
Also want to thank Bobby and Michelle Jones, Jeff Belt, Pamela Sayre, Rick Modisett, Connie Pample, Jerry and Karen Gartrell, Crossroads Church. You can help us fight bullying in the public schools and help support the Bully Resistance Show with David Wells. For more information, go to www.davebond.org. That's www.davebond.org. Thanks for tuning back in to the Bully Resistance Show with David Wells. My name is David Wells, and today we've been talking with Aaron Clubb, who is a radio producer and a co-host of the National Syndicated Radio Show, now in 50 locations across the country. You know, Aaron, on my last show, I mentioned that West Virginia is ranked 3rd overall in bullying problems.
Yeah.
And also West Virginia was ranked 5th for the percentage of high school students bullied on school property, and 2nd for the percentage of high school students bullied online.
Those are not good numbers.
No. And we know that one of the reasons for the spike increase is, of course, cyberbullying. Yeah. And which can be even more detrimental. And later on the show, I want to talk about a new type of bullying that's out there. It's called social alienation. But one of the reasons that I had you on my show, even though you were bullied in school, was you still made something of yourself. And that being a co-host and producer of a national syndicated radio show, and you know all about being successful and be determined and being disciplined and desired, because when you do what you have done for over 7.5 years and not get paid, and for doing for the love of it, and you know that you could, it just, you know, a lot of people are driven by money and material things, and with you are just a totally different specimen. That being said, but at this time, I want you to, if you can go into your story about you being bullied, like how old were you, what grade you were in, just as much details as you have.
Well, you know, actually, I was the bully when I was in 2nd or 3rd grade. I was the one that did a little bullying. Right. It's just because of my popularity in the school. But once we moved from that area, that location, to where I was raised in Farmington, things turned there. It was really it started in 3rd grade, and it was mostly because they wanted to. I had big ears. According to them, I had big ears. I think they're still big, but I don't think about it anymore. But they always wanted to flip my ears. They always wanted to, things like that. You know, it's just push, and I did a little fighting back with that in the early years, but it didn't do any good. So I was a little. There was a fear factor involved. So
you were actually in 3rd grade.
Yeah.
Okay, and then, and what I mentioned on the last show is that the majority, 90% of all the bullying that takes place is because of somebody's appearance. Either it's their looks.
Yep.
But let me ask you this, not to interrupt you, but there's different types of bullying. Of course, there's a physical bullying, verbal bullying, and cyberbullying. Of course, there wasn't cyberbullying probably back then.
No.
So was it a mixture of physical and verbal, or was it just more physical? In regards to flipping your ears?
It was mostly physical. There was some verbal because I had a teeth problem. I had like buck teeth at the time, and until my 5th or 6th grade, and when I got braces to fix that, then I had to deal with that issue.
Here's what I've been saying on these shows is that no matter how old you get, it's amazing that how we never forget those times that we were bullied.
That's true.
And it implants. I mean, we know how to live with the past.
Yeah.
And which is something. Back to being bullied, was there just one person bullying you, or was it multiple people that were?
It was multiple people. One of the things was, I think another reason why I was bullied was I was a new kid on the block, so to speak. Even though I didn't live in town, we lived on a farm several miles outside of the city limits. But Still went to the same school district and all that, and I'm the new kid on the block, and they wanted to see where my buttons were, I guess. And of course, like you said, parents had something to do with it. But I mean, the teeth may be an appearance issue, but how are you going to bully someone with bad teeth other than verbal? Right. You can't really physically mess around with that, but you can mess around with the kid's size or their ears or their noses or things like that. You can mess with physically, but right. But
so it started in third grade, and then how long did it last? Or did it just go throughout the?
It lasted until probably when I was in high school.
Okay, now I know that you mentioned that you were also bullied in 9th and 10th grade.
Yeah.
Now, was that because of your appearance, or was that because
it was just I think it was just a continuation from over the years that for the same reasons. Of course, wasn't a popular guy in school, other than the music area. I was popular there, and in some classes I may have been popular, like math or something like that. But other than that, I wasn't a nerd, right. But I wasn't, cool Joe either. But
when you're getting bullied, Aaron, do you remember the feelings, or no, you're not the,
Oh yeah.
It was just something like, was your days long? What were you feeling like? Is this ever going to stop?
The only thing I remember trying to deal with it is just that I would come home and I would tell my parents about it. And to them, they just thought that it's just kids picking on kids or whatever like that. And,
right.
And my dad would give me some advice on how to handle it when they're doing it. And of course, you don't want to promote violence. And
exactly.
And I know that sometimes, unfortunately, violence is what does solve it.
Right.
But I never got violent.
Right.
Because my dad always told me, if someone's wanting to pick on you like that, you hurt them, they'll stop.
Yeah.
And for the biggest part of it, that's probably true.
When you were just talking about your dad, you mentioned picking on him.
Yeah.
And I was talking I had actually breakfast with my mom and dad yesterday morning, and we were talking about bullying, and it seems like, and I remember when I was young, in grade school, I bullied kids.
Yeah.
And a couple of things I want to mention is that people that get bullied, they say that they'll eventually bully other people. But the terminology in bullying was picking on. It was just a low-key type of thing.
Yeah.
But what seems to be escalating this whole bullying thing is because there are kids that are committing suicide because they're being bullied.
Yeah.
And it could be because of Facebook and other things. And then also you see kids going into these schools and shooting kids.
Sure.
It's really, it's very tragic,
Yeah. And when you mention all that, and I think to me, and of course this is my opinion, I think that the majority part of bullying is a mental issue. And I think that's where everything needs to be addressed to, because if people or kids are considering suicide because of bullying, that's an emotional, mental issue for them. And how to deal with it is the key part of that.
Right.
Because back in my day when I was growing up in school, paddling was
common.
It was a common thing in school. You screw up in school, you can get paddling.
Yeah. And it didn't tickle.
So bullying really wasn't a terminology used at that time. Kids picked on kids. They're just being kids.
Right.
That kind of thing. It could escalate into some other things, and then, of course, the school would deal with that. But that's where it got to where it may have been something violent happened or something.
Let me ask you this. Bullies are the people that usually have low self-esteem.
Sure. Yep.
The kids that get bullied have self-esteem or low self-esteem.
Yep.
Where their confidence is not high, and that's why the bullies pick on those kids that have low self-esteem. Do you feel that the kids that are doing the bullying is caused by their parents, seeing what they're seeing at home. If their parents have a job where they hate, they come home every night. Do you feel like that reflects on the whole bullying situation?
Oh, it definitely could. The parent, kids' biggest influential person that they look up to is the same-sex parent. Right. So the boys look up to their dad, and they're the biggest influence. The girls look up to their moms, who has the biggest influence on them. Even though there might be a daddy's girl or a mama's boy or that kind of stuff, that doesn't really play a role in the influence of their life. So, yeah, the parents could play a role in the self-esteem on how they handle certain situations. Yeah, definitely, I could agree with that.
One of the a new type of bullying that I've been reading up on is just coming out was what you call social alienation, and this form of bullying actually can be more difficult. I guess they say that it's harder to detect, but it's the bullying where you're spreading rumors. Negative gestures, jokes, pranks, embarrassment, humiliation, and damaging someone's social reputation, which they're saying that this has more effect on kids than the other bullying.
Okay.
And it's funny because isn't it amazing how we remember our parents either when they compliment us and say, David, I'm really proud of what you do, or, where they don't say they love you. I mean, how you remember these type of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm laughing because I didn't get compliments. Like I said, I was about ready to say, yeah, Dave, I remember your dad doing that. Yeah. No, my dad said, yeah, a 3-year-old could do a better job than that. Yeah. That's the kind of compliment I got. So
right. But anyway, this social alienation, it's and I was touching on this on the last show is the girls.
Yeah.
I think they can be so vindictive, mean.
They can be extremely violent,
and they really fit this type of bullying.
I can see that. Yeah.
And with guys, it seems like, I mean, I've known you for 10, 11 years. I mean, we've got each other upset, but it's funny how it just sort of resolves by itself.
Yeah.
But with women, I mean, it's just like, man, it's like a whole process of just,
yeah, but that's that's a natural thing. That's the difference between the species, the male species and the female. It's just naturally how they deal with things, and the whole grudges. See, the women are experts on relationships, and men are the specialists at logical things, reasoning, that kind of stuff. So it's just naturally that way, and we understand if the male and female can understand that about each other. Just think about how relationships would be much better.
Yeah, that's true. Well, what I want to do now, and this is towards the end of the show, is actually, before we move on, I want to ask you this: how long did the bullying last?
Okay, it lasted up into high school.
So from third grade all the way up to high school.
Yeah, and it wasn't constant; it was on and off.
Okay.
Each year was a different effect. I mean, because of course I had to ride the bus to school. Because we lived 6-7 miles out of town, so bus was an issue there until I was a sophomore, until I was able to drive myself.
Okay, let me ask you this: so, if you can remember, how did the bullying sort of dissolve?
It ended. This is a funny thing. One morning, Mom had to take me to school, and we were going down the street, and I said, "Well, there's Leon so and so." And he was walking, and if he continued to walk, he was going to be late getting to school. And she said, "You want me to stop and pick him up?" Sure. Now, this guy was a jock, and he was Billy Bad Boy. Okay. I mean, you don't mess with this guy.
Very popular and
yeah. It was well known in the school. You don't mess with the guy. And anyway, I said, "Hey, Leon," I opened the door. "Do you want to ride to school?" He said, "Yeah, man, yeah." And he hopped in our car and we went down to school. A few days later, I think it was, I was in gym class. We were, because we were in the same gym class. We're in the same grade, by the way.
Okay.
And we were in gym, and the gym class was about to end, and the buzzer was getting ready to go so we can go to our next class. And somebody else, I can't remember the guy's name, they come up behind me and flipped me in the ears. Again, another one of those things. There's a common thing, and I just basically ignored it by that time. No big deal. But Leon says, "Hey, man, leave Clubb alone. He's cool. I would have been late for school one day." And from that moment on,
oh, really?
It stopped.
Just like that.
Just like that.
I'm telling you, here's the deal. When I go into these schools, and I do these assemblies, because 85% of all bullying, there's no intervention.
Yeah.
And that means either the parents aren't getting involved, and I've said this over and over and over, and the teachers aren't getting involved, and nobody's getting involved. I tell the kids, I said, the only way that bullying is going to stop is that if you all take action. And if you see somebody getting bullied, that's when you go up to that person and you just say, stop it. Because bullies hate when people stick together.
Yeah.
And it just confirms what I said when he told that person, don't do that anymore.
Yeah. Over the years, as I was getting bullied, I took self-defense classes.
Well, you didn't tell me that.
Yeah, I took some self-defense classes. It was karate. It was off. Of course, I didn't go pay for any classes. It was offered through 4-H when I was part of that, and so there was self-defense classes I took there. I took a little bit of Taekwondo.
Oh. But
here's the thing, and because over the past shows that you mentioned that confidence, jiu-jitsu kind of gives you confidence.
Sure.
You can take all these classes that you want.
Sure.
But if you don't practice at it,
right,
it's not going to do you any good.
Can you say that one more time?
If you don't practice with it, it will do no good. Because even though you may walk in there with confidence, and you may remember to do certain moves, but those moves have got to work in a specific way, or they don't work.
Right.
You end up you screw it up, and then things could be worse.
That's awesome.
So confidence is really, it does help. There's no question of that. But you got to practice at what you're doing when it comes to self-defense and stuff like that. So, yeah. Well, here's a key issue. One thing that did stop from the bullying part, because bullying part a lot of times was when you're wearing a piece of clothing like a ball cap,
right?
And they'll come up and grab your cap and take off running with it.
Sure.
It's a ball cap. Ignore it. Don't chase them. Don't do anything. Ignore it. And I've had so many people come and grab my cap and take off running, and here comes my bus. I got to get on my bus. But your instinct is, I want to go chase it because I want my cap back. Mm-hmm. Don't worry about it. It's just a cap. It's replaceable.
Yeah, I know. But when
you ignore it, it's a hard thing to do. But if you ignore that, they'll stop.
Yeah.
And it did. That kind of stuff stopped. And when I started ignoring more and more things, such as the flipping of the ears, that kind of stuff, the less and less it happened. And until that one day, that when I was nice to somebody, that I didn't have to be nice to.
Right.
The reward was better because I was nice. I mean, cause that's a Christian principle anyway.
Right.
Right. Is to be nice to people. Period.
It's all about being kind.
And someday, like I said, it's hard to do sometimes.
Right.
And I was always told good stuff doesn't always come easy. I mean, you gotta do some uncomfortable things in order to get to that good spot.
That's right. That's very well said. Well, let me ask you this. I sort of end a show with asking several questions, and you just give me your best answer, okay?
All right.
Okay, here's the first one. What's one word that best describes you?
Wow, that's a lot. That's hard to... One word that best describes me, I want to say persistent.
You know what? I swear to God, I was going to say that if you didn't say anything.
I may take a long time.
Yeah.
But if I want it bad enough, I'll go get it.
That's right. The second question, what is one of your biggest pet peeves? It could be with friends, wife, family, anything.
It's being asked what my pet peeve is.
Almost missed that one. Okay.
Let me see here. A pet peeve. A pet peeve is when I have my interest or my focus is on something and I keep getting interrupted. I'm seriously, I mean...
Just getting interrupted when you talk?
Well, yeah, not so much that. It's just like if I'm... Way I grew up, if I watch a TV program, because I was always told, be quiet.
Right.
When we watch TV. Some people don't grow up that way. When they got something to say, they just do it.
Right.
When I got my focus on the TV program, I'm trying to listen to what they're doing, or saying like that, and company or whatever who's there, and they keep interrupting. I can't focus on the show, so I don't get anything out of the program that I want to watch. So
sound like my wife, man. Next question: what natural gift would you most like to possess? Now, let me mention this to you. Of all the people I've interviewed, they've always said, "I want to be a musician. I want to play guitar." Now, since you play music, what would it be?
I've always claimed to be jack of all trades, master of none.
Well, I don't know.
So
I think you're being humbled there.
I really don't know. I like to cook. I like to
see. That's good.
I would like to, which I'm trying to pursue a barbecue business. So, I like to really get good at that.
Well, I can tell you, you're already good at that. Actually, you won first place at the Nashville Ribbon Jazz Festival.
That's right, I did.
Okay,
that was that day.
And I know this answer. Who is your favorite band?
Rush.
Yeah, that's my favorite band now. Okay, what profession other than your own would you like to attempt? I think you mentioned that already.
Yeah, it would be cooking or chef. I don't know if I want to be full-fledged chef, but...
Okay. Now, if... Next question. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Son, it took you a long time, but job well done.
Cool. Okay. Next question. On a scale 1 to 10, how weird are you?
I'm not that weird.
And you're not?
I would say maybe a 3 or 4.
Yeah, and the only reason why I can say that is because I've known you for years and years.
Yeah, I don't. I'm not the type of person that I have enough confidence where I can be goofy, really goofy, or out in public or anything like that. So
right.
Yeah.
And last question: tell me something true that almost nobody agrees with you on.
Health issues.
Darn right, man. You've lost your mind on those.
No, see, that's where you think I'm weird.
Well, let me tell the audience. One of his debates that we have on is no exercise is better than exercising. So.
Well, no. I'm going to have to correct that.
Okay.
I'm going to have to correct that. No, I never did say exercise was bad. I said there's no proof. There's no scientific proof that exercise helps you live longer. And the reason is because when you exercise, you're losing elements out of your body that you're not replacing.
Well, okay, but if you replace them.
But you replace them, exercise could probably be a good thing.
So now you're changing your mind.
No, I'm not changing my mind. I've always thought that.
Well, you never told me that. You never told me about...
listened. It's that Lipitor that's kicking in.
Yeah, Lipitor. Anyway, we'll go.
Yeah, because there's scientific proof where it's one extreme to the other. Where athletes who exercises a lot,
right?
Their average lifespan is 65 to 68, depending on what sport they're involved with, compared to a couch potato who doesn't exercise at all, whose average lifespan is 75.
I know that.
So why is that? Well, the prime example is because you're losing elements when you exercise.
And they're not replenishing.
They're not replenishing them. And Gatorade doesn't replenish them.
Oh, man. Well, that's about all that we have on the Bully Resistance Show with David Wells. Before we go, I just want to thank all the sponsors for supporting the Bully Resistance Show. Also, I want to encourage all our listeners to go on Facebook and just to help me get the word out about the Bully Resistance Show with David Wells. Also, if you can go to iTunes and just leave a comment and give us a 5-star, that would definitely help us with our ratings and get more visibility. But until next time, thanks for listening.